Bin Young doesn't have a talent for art. That's what my art teacher said to my mom while I was standing right there. I was in high school. So for years, when I was a kid, I begged my parents to take me to art classes. I always got a no. You need to study. You need to be a doctor or a lawyer, not an artist. You need to make money. Finally, in high school, my mom found a fine art class. I was so excited. I honestly didn't even know what fine art meant, but I just knew I finally got to make art. On my first day of class, the teacher handed me oil paints and a canvas, and in front of us was a blue ceramic vase with dried flowers, and he told me to paint it. I had never painted with oils before, but I couldn't wait to try. Throughout class, he'd occasionally walk by, look at my painting, and quietly move on. At the end of class, my mom came to pick me up. I was so excited to show her what I made. Instead, my teacher called us over. My mom asked, "How did class go?" He looked at me, then he looked at my painting, then he paused and said, "Minyoung just doesn't have a talent for art." I honestly don't remember anything after that. I was trying hard not to cry because I knew I wasn't coming back. And the worst part of it all, I believed him. Have you ever wondered if you're not naturally creative, or has someone convinced you that you weren't? Maybe you've had a moment like that too. Maybe someone laughed at your ideas. Maybe a teacher criticized something you created. Maybe someone told you your dream wasn't realistic. Maybe nobody said anything, but you compared yourself to everyone else until you convinced yourself you weren't good enough. If you've been wanting to start a creative business for years, but somehow never make the process, I want you to hear this. It doesn't mean you're lazy, it doesn't mean you're incapable, and it definitely does not mean you're not creative. Sometimes what's keeping us stuck isn't because you're not talented enough, it's an old story we've been carrying around for years. Maybe you're not someone who lacks creativity, maybe you're someone who's learned to hide it. Hi, I'm In Young. For the past 6 years, I've been teaching people how to start and scale their dog bakery businesses. I now offer mentorship for aspiring pet treat entrepreneurs one by one by helping them create a personalized roadmap to launch their businesses in 3 to 6 months. If you've ever been dreaming about turning your love for dogs into a business, I'd love to help you. I included the links below. But today, I don't want to talk about recipes or pricing or business plans. I want to talk about something much deeper because I think this might be the real reason so many creative people never begin. So here's what I believe is actually going on. So you do the late night doom scroll, you watch other creative people, other business owners doing the same thing you wish you were doing. And you think, wow, they're just built differently. They have so much talent. They're so lucky they're born with it. I could never do that. I used to believe the same thing. But here's the thing, it's not that they're more talented than you, that's just your brain trying to protect you from being judged. Putting creative work out into the world feels and is vulnerable. It's basically an open invitation for someone to tell you it's not good enough. And for most of us, that possibility is just too much to risk. So we just don't. We stay in the scrolling and researching phase. We stay in the someday because someday is safe, someday can't be judged. That art class was the last time I made real art for me for a really long time. I didn't create again for years. From that moment, when I was standing in front of my teacher, from that day forward, I buried my creativity. I quietly decided that maybe I just wasn't a creative person at all. Not because I stopped loving art, but because I never wanted to feel that kind of shame or embarrassment ever again. Maybe your version of that moment wasn't an art teacher. Maybe it was a parent who said your passion wasn't a real career, a friend or sibling who laughed at something you made that you put your whole heart into, a comment online that made you think about if you're really good at what you do. Or maybe nobody said anything, but you compared yourself to everyone else until you convinced yourself you weren't good enough. And if that's you, I want you to know something. The way you feel and wanting to bury your creativity makes sense. Okay, so here's what's actually happening in your brains. Our brains are constantly trying to answer one question every single day. What do I need to avoid to stay safe? When you're a kid and something like that happens, a moment of public judgment, especially from an authority figure, your brain doesn't file it away as one opinion, one day, One guy. It files it as data. Danger and threat to me data. Your brain's whole job is to keep you safe, and it's not always great at telling the difference between this could physically harm me and this is socially embarrassing. Because to your nervous system, both feel like danger. It's holding on to that memory, and years later, even decades, when you get close to doing something creative and putting it out there, your subconscious mind pulls that old file back up and goes, "Oh, remember what happened last time? Let's not do that again." Even though you're not in that classroom anymore, even though that teacher's opinion was never actually a fact, not because painting is dangerous, not because starting a business is dangerous, but because your brain remembers how painful it felt to be judged. It's just running old data to keep you safe. You know that hesitation you feel before you post, or before you launch, or before you even try? That is not you being lazy or you not being a creative person. That's an old memory doing exactly what it thinks its job is. And because it feels uncomfortable, we often tell ourselves a different story. I'm just not creative. Maybe I'm not just cut out for this. I'll start when I'm better. But what if that isn't the truth? What if you're not someone who lacks creativity? What if you're someone who learned to hide it? And those are two very different things. And here's the part I really want you to sit with. Creativity was never something you're born with or without. That is actually a myth. Creativity is actually a skill, and it grows through doing again and again, then messing things up and trying again. Every single person you scroll past at 11 p.m. who seems naturally talented, they just kept going, even when it was hard, ugly, and not perfect. And that's it. That's the whole secret. So, the good news is that your memories and thoughts can also be unlearned and replaced with new memories or evidence. I actually learned this lesson in a way I never expected. So, years later, when I started my dog bakery business, I decorated my first batch of cookies. Honestly, I thought they were so ugly and I was embarrassed on how awful they looked. Like the icing was messy, the piped drawings weren't great. I looked at them and thought, oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing. No one's going to buy these. And my husband said, just post them. I laughed and said, no way. He kept encouraging me. And finally, I uploaded this cookie set on Amazon, thinking that it was just nothing was going to ever come out of it. But within minutes, someone bought a box, then another, then another, and a handful of cookie orders came in within 20 minutes. And my husband looked at me and laughed. I think we're in the dog cookie business. I laugh every time I think about that moment because if I had listened to the story I had been telling myself since high school, none of my business would have come true or would have happened. My dog bakery that I ran for 6 years wouldn't have existed. I wouldn't have shipped thousands of products to customers every week, and I wouldn't be mentoring amazing entrepreneurs today. It all started because I was willing to let reality challenge an old belief. So here's one small thing I'd love for you to do this week. Let's reconnect with your creativity. I'd love for you to just spend 15 minutes doing something creative. It doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be finished, and it doesn't have to be shared. Something that lights you up. I just want you to prove to yourself that the creative part of you is still in there. So paint, dance, take photographs, decorate cookies, write, build something. Remember, you're giving yourself permission to create again. And when you're ready, share it. Even if you cringe inside a little, every time you create, you're collecting new evidence. Evidence that you can survive being seen, evidence that one person's opinion doesn't define your potential, evidence that you're far more capable than you've been giving yourself credit for. Now, for some of you, that's the whole video. That's your assignment. Go make something that lights you up on purpose. But for some of you, that spark is actually bigger than a hobby. Maybe what you've been sitting on isn't, I want to paint again. It's actually, I want to build something, a dog treat business, a real one. And if that's you, that's genuinely what I do. I created my mentorship program. I'd love to work alongside you, and I'll leave the information in the description box below. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. And remember, the world doesn't need a perfect vision of your creativity. It just needs the version that only you can bring. Everyone is creative. You just have to let yourself let it out. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.